Look, I know being part of a work group is often thankless work, so a round of applause again for the work groups and some of the results we just got to see. All right, we've got one more section before we turn you loose amongst yourselves here. I want to bring Chad Summey up, Larissa Sims up to talk about CVG's Regional Aviation Development Plan. And Chad, as you know, is the managing partner of eGateway Capital on the Corridor of Commerce. So they're going to talk about a couple of those initiatives here as well before we get into some breakout groups. And you guys can take those mics or take the podium if you want.
Thanks, everybody. It's great to be here. Great to see a crowded room. Chad Summey with eGateway Capital. I really don't have anything to say after Jeremy's presentation. But that was amazing. And hopefully you all walked away. So what we are going to spend a couple minutes on, I'm going to hand it over to Larissa to go deep on the airport. But Bob said something earlier this morning. So we get to talk about growth. And growth is always the most fun topic. As they always say, change is inevitable, growth is optional. You have to do something around it. So Bob mentioned people, right? Systems. I would throw in one extra thing, Bob, where are you? Is vision. And I think Jeremy mentioned it, that our region, namely he focused on Northern Kentucky, but I would argue Cincinnati as well, our region is unknown. And, there's a lot to a vision, including what Jeremy's working on, identity and storytelling. But really the Corridor of Commerce, this initiative that our board picked up last year, and we're continuing, and Larissa's going to take the first manifestation of it, is really around inventorying our assets. There was one thing I did disagree actually with Jeremy, and he said that commerce isn't sexy. Commerce is definitely sexy. It just depends who you're speaking with. So while Jeremy is focused on the whole sphere of workforce, of quality of life, the Corridor of Commerce is really for the cohort of business. And so when we're on the coast talking about our region, talking about iconic assets that we may be close to, namely having the world's largest consumer products good company, Procter & Gamble, the largest retailer, standalone grocer, Kroger, and the newest to the story, which happens to reside in Northern Kentucky, the advent of the fastest growing cargo airport in the country. And so these are assets that are very close to home to all of us in this room. But the Corridor of Commerce is really an elevation of language, of storytelling around those assets, and specifically why those assets matter into the future economy, and why we as Northern Kentuckians and Greater Cincinnatians should be super excited that we have iconic assets here that, as Jeremy said for me, are truly unmatched in the entire country. So I'm going to jump in as Larissa tells the deeper story, but this story begins and ends with the airport. And there is no greater place of leadership for our community, and there are no assets that can move an entire region than an airport. So with that, Larissa.
Thank you. Is that better? Yes, there we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Larissa Sims. I'm Director of Business Administration at CVG Airport, and I'm glad to be here with you today. I wanted to just start with some additional facts, right? First of all, Jeremy and everyone else who's referenced CVG today, thank you so much. We are so thankful that we have so many great partners here in the region to help us continue this growth. I've got a slide up. I wanted to start with this slide sort of as a level set and kind of give you some additional facts, some of which you've heard already, but just as a refresher, right? CVG has 14 plus airlines that we serve. We are the 6th largest North American cargo airport and the 12th largest globally. We have 7,700 acres and over 16,000 employees on our campus that are badged coming in and out every single day. Over 70 employers that are on our campus, 47,000 jobs and $9.3 billion with a B, economic impact for this region, right? So we have had some success over the last several years. And the map that's on the screen for you kind of illustrates what that shows as well. And it shows some of our future areas of growth. We talk about logistics. We talk about the aviation and aerospace ecosystem. You see on there, of course, Amazon and DHL. We have another development that we're working on. We're calling it the Global Logistics Park on the north side, the yellow bubble there, to further diversify the cargo offerings that we have on campus. Similarly, we have Hangar Row, which most of you probably know that we were very thankfully blessed with some additional funding from the state to kickstart that very important project to our ecosystem. It's going to be a maintenance and repair operations asset that we have, again, just to make sure that all of our businesses continue to run smoothly in terms of their airplanes and such. And then we have our offsite development, right? So our non-aeronautical development that is very important, not only to the airport, but to the economic development in the region. You can see we've got some of those marked sort of on the right side, and then we have a large development we're actually calling Site 7 at this point that we're working on with Adam Hemmer to continue to build new opportunities for manufacturing and industry alongside the airport's growth. And so this map also sort of shows you, right, that resources are finite, right? Land that we own and control as an airport are finite. And so we have in the past and will continue to work with our partners in Boone County, to work with our partners at BNKY and Ready Cincinnati to try to help to leverage the economic opportunities in other spaces that come along with the aviation aerospace industry. So the regional development plan, right, is really what I'm here to talk about. So we are interested in continuing to target aerospace, logistics, supply chain businesses. I don't know if you noticed on Jeremy's earlier slide, it showed the significant growth around logistics, but also around the aerospace industry. You know, we've got some powerhouses here, GE, and along with the list that you mentioned as well. And back in 2021, our board asked us to take on some new initiatives under our strategic plan, one of which was really to get more engaged in beyond airport boundaries, economic development strategies. So this year, we kicked off an effort with EY as our consulting firm to take a look at, not only the growth of our region proper, but what could happen if we aligned ourselves with other players in sort of this super region, right? And we are focused on Louisville to Cincinnati to Dayton for this particular initiative. And we've got some statistics up there on the board that you can see. The three regions have different things that they can bring to the table, right? Clearly, we've talked a lot today about the assets that we have in our region. But Dayton with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and the air mobility, the advanced air mobility hub that they have going on, that's an asset that they can bring to the super region. Louisville, obviously, with its express delivery and the healthcare logistics sector, right? So this strategy that we have embarked upon is to identify first, are there things that we should be working on together, right? So we convened a very large group all up and down that corridor that you see there on the map to start to have those conversations. What can we be working on together to elevate not only our situation here in the nation, but globally, right? How do we brand ourselves as the Silicon Valley of aerospace and aviation, and really put us on the map, so to speak, for global businesses to be taking a harder look at. And so,
I would just end by saying I just want everybody in the room to kind of digest the vernacular of corridor of commerce. We really, from Detroit to Atlanta, most of the nation's goods move in that corridor. And we think there is special assets, what Jeremy captioned around motion, that are truly unmatched in the region. In the 100 miles west to Indianapolis with FedEx's second largest presence, and 100 miles south to Louisville, obviously with UPS's largest presence, and then with DHL and Amazon, you have 3 of the top 4, excluding Memphis out of FedEx, physical assets around the movement of goods sitting within 100 miles and all in the Commonwealth. So it really is, when you digest that and start thinking about what that means, we're excited as a OneNKY board to elevate that into a true business plan that goes across industries. So Larissa just took us through one industry of aviation, but motion, as Jeremy, I'll use his words, matters in the future economy for all industries. So closer direct to consumer, think about healthcare supply chain, think about every advanced manufacturer in the world should know that this corridor of commerce hub sits right where we reside here in Northern Kentucky in the greater Cincinnati region, which when you put it in that context gets really exciting around what the opportunity that Jeremy also underlined that I think we would all agree in the room has not been our strength is storytelling. And really letting a story that is rooted not in anything we have to make up, but in all of our physical, authentic, iconic assets that one could argue are quite immovable. So it should provide a huge strategic advantage for us for decades to come, which I hope you leave today with a little more clarity around and excitement. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you both. All right, now it's your turn. We're going to break off into your tables here for the next 10, 15 minutes. We want your feedback. We want your engagement. We want your thoughts. You've heard a lot. So, of course, we're splitting this up into a couple of things here. But the first half of the session, we focused on a couple of things, right? Building the Northern Kentucky identity, OneNKY's growth organization alignment through vision and goal alignment, the Northern Kentucky business plan, the corridor of commerce, and CVG's regional strategy. So that's what we want your feedback on. We're going to take about 15 minutes. These are your guiding questions. They're at your table. They're on the screen as well. When it comes to OneNKY building community, just give us your general impression of the efforts here, of both the internal and the external. What changes would you make? And how can you and your business and your organization help support these initiatives? Then move on, and we'll give you some time cues, onto the growth organization alignment. What do you think about the vision statement? And how would you prioritize and change the goals that were presented? And then we'll talk about your understanding of the corridor of commerce and the CVG regional aviation plan. And we'll be back with you here in a few minutes.
Sorry.
All right, everyone. Thank you for your table talk. We'll do this again here in just a little bit. But I want, as the table captains, I think you all know, to leave your discussion notes at the table at the end of the event. And then that way we can collect all of what you have talked about. But again, we'll do another table talk here in just a couple of minutes. In the meantime, I want to bring Bob back up as we continue into the next portion of the event. So, Bob, bring us home.
Okay, everybody, if we could have your attention, please. Hopefully the discussions were interesting. We'll get back to more opportunities for groupthink shortly. Wonderful. At the 2021 summit, education shot to the top of the list as an issue that the community demanded action on. Quickly after the summit, a group of influencers in education, public, private, and alternative convened to strategize. Through this feedback, Educate NKY became a priority within the OneNKY Alliance framework. And in 2022, the OneNKY Alliance listened, incubated, launched Educate NKY. A strong founding board was formed, chaired by Greg Fisher. We hired former superintendent and education innovator Tim Hanner as our first CEO. And under Tim's leadership, a landscape assessment was conducted, published, and work groups formed. Educate NKY is poised to carry out its work due in large part to the generosity, passion, and commitment of OneNKY Alliance board member and Educate NKY Board Chair Greg Fisher. And last week, the OneNKY Alliance member Maura Weir announced that the United Way would invest $500,000 toward the effort of Educate NKY. Yeah. Upon Tim Hanner's retirement earlier this year, the board hired Shai Calvo as our new CEO. Shai was able to hit the ground running as he had served as our consultant for the landscape assessment. Shai and his team have authored Educate NKY's strategic plan, which will be rolled out as part of this summit. It is our pleasure to invite Shai to the stage to present this transformational systemic change within Northern Kentucky. Shai.
Thank you, Bob. Good afternoon, everyone. Is this the green button is what makes those things go forward? Let's see if it works. This is the test. The arrow one. Thank you, Tara. I heard your voice. All right. As Bob mentioned earlier this year, Educate NKY released a landscape assessment. It's online, educatenky.com, 60 pages of data and context and lots of material that I encourage you to peruse. If I had to sum it up simply for you, the education landscape in Northern Kentucky, well, we're above average in a below average state. Put that in a sports metaphor, we're competing for a high school state championship. The question is that the league we want to play in? Do we want to be in the major leagues? Do we want to compete globally? Do we want a world championship? I think that's the question we need to ask ourselves. But it's important to understand that in America, schools are largely reflections of the communities that they serve. And my favorite part of the landscape assessment, and talking to well over 100 people and digging through it all, is exploring what Fernando Figueroa calls the mythologies, the stories that we tell ourselves, and the way we understand ourselves. And it's really that I think really gets at the core of this conversation, is we have values here. There are things we believe, and those are awesome. And I think we need to then look at those values in contrast to reality. So let's do that for a minute. So in Northern Kentucky, we believe that all kids deserve a fair shot at learning. Yet, only half of our kids arrive in kindergarten ready to learn. And in the river cities, it's barely a third. And we have a system of kindergarten readiness that has gotten a generation worth of really hard work and a lot of investment. There are patches and bright spots that encourage us, but there's no comprehensive and coordinated system to pull it all together. So as a result, our belief that all kids deserve a shot is 50% true. So in Northern Kentucky, we believe that our kids are the future. The challenge with this is our kids aren't being prepared for the future that's in front of them. So sadly, that kindergarten readiness number that I just told you about, for most school districts in Northern Kentucky, that's the high point of the education system. The counties which have built systems do a better job at pushing that number up a little bit in elementary school, but the other districts, it goes the other way. It doesn't matter whether you're one of the elite independents or in the river cities. And then in middle school, it falls off a cliff, and it really doesn't rise that much in high school. So we're getting to the place that most of our kids who graduate, we have a 95% high school graduation rate. Most of our kids who graduate are not proficient in the basic subjects, much less science. Statewide science proficiency this year, 6%. Distinguished rounds off to 0. 0. Who's going to work in that biolab? So we also tell ourselves Northern Kentucky is a thriving region. But we have to confront the fact that declines in education over the last decade threaten our economic prosperity. So that kindergarten readiness rate we've been working on for a generation, it's 3 points below where it was a decade ago. Our middle school reading and math proficiency is down 12 points, outpacing the nation and the state, which are both also headed in the wrong direction. And ACT, The coveted ACT, over the last 5 years, region-wide, is down 1.5 points. This threatens our future prosperity. And then that key one, that mythology that is dear to us, through which we see ourselves. We believe that this is a place where you can roll up your sleeves and get stuff done. But the truth of the matter is we let the complexities of the education system keep us from making the changes that we need to make. We accept incrementalism. Oh, well, a point better this year, a point maybe in this one. There's always a good story. There's always a positive note to tell. But the reality is, if we want to play in the major leagues, we have to do better. We have to elevate. And that requires a degree of commitment to dive into those complexities, not to blame and shame, because again, if we accept this premise that this system is a product of us, these are our kids, it's a reflection of our society, this is the reality that we have to confront. So let me tell you, let me lay out that scenario. You have 2 kids. One's on track, one's going to do fine. The other one, not on track, maybe a little bit lost. Are you going to accept that? You're not, because that's not who you are. You're going to move heaven and earth to support that kid with love and everything they need to give them a fair chance. But what I need you to do is take that scenario and multiply it times 30,000 kids in Northern Kentucky who are not on track. These realities do not reflect our beliefs. So do we dilute our beliefs or do we change our reality? And that's really the issue in front of us. Because the good news is that there's nothing that we believe about ourselves that we don't have it within our power to make happen. And so that ultimately is what this strategic plan is about. It's about igniting possible. It's there in front of us, but we have to accept it as something we want to make happen and make it a collective priority, because it's the only way we're going to advance to the next level. So it's not a lot of a time, but let me just say, what does that mean? We'll say, very basically, we need to start strong. We need to tell our kids, and we as a community need to start strong. We need to build their skills, and we need to own the future. We need them to own the future. So what does that mean? So we're breaking this down into components, and I could be here for a lot longer than like the 5 minutes I have left to talk about this. But it means that we need to make systemic changes to readjust our education system, bold, transformative changes. And we have to do it. We can't tell other people they have to do it. We can't point to superintendents and school districts, and they work really hard, but they have their own world. We are the ones who lead this community, and we have to own that responsibility. So what does that mean? Well, let me give you an example. Kindergarten readiness. We all know about kindergarten readiness. We have a universal screen that happens to every kid when they start kindergarten. Do you know that kindergarten readiness has nothing to do with the things that happened before kindergarten? We don't even tell our day providers, our childcare providers, what their kindergarten readiness rates are. It's not a North Star. It's a starting point for that. Systemically, that's broken. We need to align our incentives and our measures to make sure that kids are on track to start kindergarten ready. Because if they do that, that's when that changes everything. If you're a new first, kindergarten teacher and 50% of your kids are ready versus a third ready, that's a different day and different possibilities. What does it mean to engage families in the process? What does it mean to organize a community? That's what it means. Like, we have to change how we do things to make those things priorities, to help families who face barriers to understand their role in the education process. And we have to start prenatal. When it comes to building skills, we need to remove barriers to families to owning their child's education. They have to champion it. We can't do it for them. We need to give exposure opportunities. We need to set up a system where small inner city, river city districts who are working really hard have chances to collaborate and work together. And when it says to own the future, and I'm running through this very fast and I apologize, We really need to give a space for kids to have agency. We need to unlock the potential of those kids to decide their future. We cannot subject to geographic boundaries or programs that don't work with you. That means when it comes to the river cities, we need to give them the same open enrollment they have in the counties. We need to have money follow the kid rather than kids having to work with the options that are provided. And that's transformational, but there's nothing that needs to be done that the school districts can't do collectively. They're not going to get there on their own, so we have to apply the pressure and the support and the love and the engagement and the pressure for them to do the hard things. Because if we do that, there's so many places we can go. So I want to point out that a lot of you might say, it'd be great if there was a really simple solution here, Shai. And I would like to provide you one, but there's not. This is a comprehensive plan, and I'd love to talk more about it, but it needs to run over because the system works differently in different places, and so we need to layer it. We need to do different things at different stages of the kids' journey so that we can impact every stage to promote them forward. And that means layering across this very long generational pipeline. But if we do it, we have the ability to raise up. So in the River City, there are about 10,000 kids either in or headed to our public schools. That's a nice round number. It's a workable number. And right now, about 30% of them are on track. So if we're able to change that dynamic by starting stronger, elevate kindergarten readiness in the River Cities to 50%, let's stop the slide. And let's make the structural changes that we can begin over a longer time frame to bend the curve upward. If we can transform the River Cities, the 10,000 kids in the River Cities will quickly become 11,000, will become 12,000. They will provide the baseline for us to elevate all of Northern Kentucky and get us to the major leagues. Because what it comes down to is that we have a choice in front of us. You know, I won't hold you responsible for things you do not know, but now that you know, there is the question, are you going to dilute your values and your beliefs to accept reality? Or are you going to change your reality? Are you going to make and move your reality to match your values and beliefs? There's a lot in this, but what I do want to take a moment just to touch on Educate NKY's role. Because one thing about Northern Kentucky is we are program rich. We got a lot of great things going on, but we are coordination poor. And so Educate NKY, we're not going to run programs. We're going to serve as a catalyst. We're going to serve as an incubator, an accelerator, and an activator to help make things happen. We're going to scale the things that are proven, we're going to test the things that are promising, and we're going to encourage you to stop doing things that aren't data-driven and don't work. And sometimes that's going to require hard conversations. But it's what's going to have to happen for us in order to meet our vision of igniting every eager, vibrant mind. Because ultimately, we're going to found what we do in our values. That's truth. We're going to have to say what's out there. We're going to have to own the data. We have to be optimistic because ultimately this is about making the possible happen. This isn't some pie in the sky idea. It just requires us being bold and caring enough and following through. And it requires us being brave. It requires us leading and standing up and saying that it's okay to do things differently. Ultimately, this is about making and moving our reality. This is about unleashing our potential in our region, in our state, in our country. And we are asking you to join with us. Thank you.